What is going on? No horsing around, family. Zach Boyd and Stephen Burton back at it again. And guys, the Jonathan Taylor, Jim Irsay saga continues. And as it continues, we continue covering it, right? You hear reports, Stephen, today about this NFI. Colts are considering adding him to the NFI list, which is a real big deal, Stephen, for two reasons. A, would not have to pay him while he's on this list. And B, if he were, let's just say, worst case scenario, because that's what you got to kind of assume until we get different information. If he were to not play this year, then his contract basically would be moved back 1 year. So he would be right back in the same exact situation next year as he is right now, and, would not have made any money this year. So fascinating story. I know there was James Boyd, Mike Chappell. I mean, everybody's gotten a hold of the tweets at this point. As you'll see right here, Stephen Holder chimes in. I think Ian Rappaport, Schefter, all the big people, Nationals as well. Turns out he had a back injury when he was kind of off facility, off site, working out his own, I believe in Arizona. And now that's why he failed the physical. So we all kind of wonder, like, what's going on, with his ankle? What's going on with his ankle? Well, it looks like at the very last second, I don't know if the Colts knew this prior, or if they just kind of found it out as he walked in and maybe, had this discussion with the front office. Crazy stuff, Stephen. Just what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's my initial thoughts is like I'm having like massive deja vu to like the skiing accident, right? Like that's the first, like, as a Colts fan, you're like, geez. And then the other part too is like you start going back to some of the stuff that happened yesterday, right? And you heard we did the episode, we dropped one yesterday about Irsay and kind of what he said coming off of the bus and the request of the trade and all those things. But one of the things he mentioned was they were looking into this a little bit because you remember he said, I think it was EJ Speed, had the same surgery and he was back, the same ankle surgery.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to figure some things out, which leads me to believe, I'm hard pressed to believe they didn't know. But man, like if you didn't know that he injured himself and then he came into this.
Yeah.
And like me and you were talking about right before we started recording was, how do you misjudge the overall situation as badly as the Jonathan Taylor camp has? You come in demanding in a very poor market. You come in having had a down year last year, coming off of a surgery, and now you're coming in with like a back injury you got off on your own. Like it's just, it seems so. I said I didn't think he would fire his agent. This is so miscalculated that I think he might end up doing that. And then I personally, me and you were talking about this too, I'd do a little bit more research because I don't know enough about the NFI list in general. Like, there's been cases of people going on it. I think one of the examples I read was Jameson Williams. He was on the NFI list because of the injury he had in college.
Yeah.
And then there was another one about someone falling off a bike and breaking his wrist. It's those ones because it's kind of the player's fault. Like it'd be like it'd be like a player blowing his knee out playing basketball a little bit if it's not in the contract. So, really interesting stuff because reading the tweets too, if the Colts didn't have all the power, which I think everyone's in agreement they do in the situation, they absolutely do now because they don't have to pay him a dime until he passes a physical if they put him on this list.
Yep. So it's really just at this point, Stephen, it's more of a chess match, right? It's Jonathan Taylor and his camp versus, Jim Irsay, Chris Ballard in that camp. And, I think there's been, for the most part, I think Indianapolis has held the leverage. Now, there was a rare small glimpse of a moment where Jonathan Taylor comes out of that bus and then immediately goes, straight to Albert Breer and says he has formally requested a trade. And then Jim Irsay, as we're getting ready to get into kind of the second part of this, he immediately takes that back. He comes out and he tweets, and I'm paraphrasing here, but, he will not be traded now, nor will he be traded in October. I mean, definitive, very straight to the point. He didn't elaborate. He didn't go into this big, blubbering mess. He simply said, we're not trading him. We're not trading him in October. We don't care. And he just debunked that completely. And I think at this point, he has his claws sunk in on this. This has become, I think, a little more personal with Jim Irsay, as we've seen in the last few days, some things that come out with Jonathan Taylor's agent. I think there's been some personal things that's really affected just that relationship. I think Jim wanted to do his very best, calling him on that bus and having a conversation to try to mend some fences. Clearly, that did not go the way that it was supposed to go. As you got up, Jim Irsay, we will not trade Jonathan Taylor. That is a certainty, not now or not in October. I mean, that is pretty. I mean, that's pretty telling, Stephen. I mean, that's saying that you can request something, you can do whatever you want in the media, you can tweet anything out in the world. We have you under contract. You're either going to play for us or you're not going to play at all. Point blank. Period.
Yeah, and the interesting part, is when you look at this, we hear Stephen Holder talk about that the request really was several days ago. He made the request to Ballard, and the bus yesterday was more of a reaction with Irsay. I think all the jokes are it's Irsay saying, stop it. Like, go play if you can play. This is what we're doing. A lot of people thought they were talking contract. And even in all of this, hey, we're not going to trade him. Now we're not trading him at the trade deadline. And he still is stuck, like you said, he's dug his heels in too. And he still said, hey, we're not doing a contract extension. Go play. Go play, and we will pay you. And one of the interesting things, and I think it was James Boyd said this, is one of the things that Irsay said was, we take care of our players. Yeah. And you've never, and I think it was James Boyd who pointed out, no, not a peep from ex-players have come out and said, well, that's not true. He takes care of the Colts players when he wants to. And I think it's interesting to say too, could you not see a more opposite side of the coin of how you approach your contract than the Jonathan Taylor camp and the Michael Pittman Jr. camp? Michael Pittman Jr. has not talked once about, he's basically said, it is what it is. I'm going to go play. And this has just turned into such a circus that it's just and then like we said earlier, like to demand a trade in the market that you're in. And me and you have heard anywhere from 16 to I've heard a number as high as 20 is what his agent promised him in a market where that's not happening.
Yeah.
No one's trading a first round pick for Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts wouldn't part with him for less than a first round pick, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, even at the $4.3 million mark, if he doesn't play a snap this year, Stephen, I'm content with that. I'll just pay him his $4.3 million. If he doesn't do anything, he's not going to completely dictate what the Colts do with him. Now, I think the Colts would love to have him on the football field. I think that's what's been lost in all of this is I think they really would like to have him on the football field. And no one has come out and denied his talent. I don't even think anyone's denied the fact that they would be willing to pay him. Now, I think he takes a little bit of issue with the fact he hasn't even been offered an actual contract extension. But when you go to the Colts in the offseason, you have sit down with Chris Ballard and, hey, by the way, I just injured my back. Very hard to negotiate with someone who's injured. It's a very unfair ask, because normally the main reasons that they want these contracts is in case of an injury. Well, he's already injured. It's not that type of situation. So for me, I mean, it's crazy because you don't see Jonathan Taylor and his demeanor be like this. We haven't seen this side of him. I just think he's really in a bad spot. I think he just hired a new agent. I think, he'd like to get something worked out with this agent. He's got him in his ear, and he's got him kind of turned sour on the Colts. But I don't think Jonathan Taylor is enjoying this process either. Just from what interactions I've seen with him and everything like that, I don't think this has been a fun experience for him either. And he's probably going through quite a bit mentally right now and struggling with that. You look at Josh Jacobs over there, in Las Vegas. Well, yeah, he's not showing up. Yeah, he's angry. Yes, he wishes he had an extension. There's none of this going on. There's been no demands. It's just been simple. He's told them privately, I'm not showing up until I get paid, and that's it. I mean, it's just going to be that way, you know. And this is a guy who's in a franchise tag type of year, you know. This is not even a guy who's in his last year of his rookie contract. He's further along in this process, you know, than Jonathan Taylor is. The best thing, in my opinion, that Jonathan Taylor can do is get healthy, get on the football field, make the Indianapolis Colts look at him and say, we just cannot imagine a future without Jonathan Taylor. Let's pay him. Maybe not, you know, to the extent of what he would hope to get. I mean, everybody hopes to get the best deal, you know. He can hope to get 16 million, but at the end of the day, that dries up. Maybe he gets 12 or 13 million, and he can just be really happy with that because he's going to be paid better than 99% of the NFL running backs going out there right now. You know, it's a very fair deal, and I think he will get a fair deal if he goes out there and does the right thing. So for me, I know it's a little bit long-winded. I think the best thing for him to do is just literally go out there and play. And you go out there and play, rush for a couple touchdowns, 150-yard game. People stop forgetting a little bit about these conversations, and they stop talking about the off-field stuff, and they start talking about the on-field stuff.
Well, and you hear it all the time, right? Like I'm going to say a name, Joe Flacco, right? You hear it all the time. Gamble on yourself, right? They're not going to pay you right now, and I know you don't feel like you should have to. And we love Jonathan Taylor, right? Like we have said it repeatedly. Go back 3 years on this show, right? Since he's been here, he's had one really good year, one decent year, 1,000-yard rushing season, and then an injury year. That's tough. And we talk about, there's a precedent with the Colts and how they've reworked these contracts. We could be honest, too. Some of those have blown up in the Colts' face.
Sure.
Quentin Nelson got hurt, you know, Shaq Leonard got hurt. Like some of those blew up in their face. And we've all asked over and over for Chris Ballard to change the way he does things. This is part of it, right? Like this is part of changing and show me on the field, you know, that you can do it. I agree with you. The more that comes out, I just am so dumbfounded at how poorly and misplayed the hand was. It's shocking to me. It's almost like business malpractice. When you brought up the injury, right? Like to negotiate with an injured player. We talked about that a week ago.
Yeah. When
he was on PUP list for what we thought was his ankle. And now you're talking about a back injury that we weren't sure that we knew about. I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think that he's going to be forced to play. I think the report said $400,000 is what it's going to cost to sit out training camp. He's making $4 million. He's not sitting out training camp. Like Le'Veon Bell will always tell people, $14 million he turned down from the Steelers. That money's not coming back. That's gone money. $4 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
To just waste away.
Well,
if he's healthy, he'll play.
And money you can never get back. You know, I mean, it's just gone forever, and it's always kind of dumbfounded me as well as these running backs demand this money, and I understand why they want to get paid because, you know, to be fair on their side, it is a little bit unfair. You know, they have a lot of production, they do a lot of things on the football field to help, you know, win football games, and they don't get paid as much as all of the other, you know, positions do in the NFL. With that being said, I mean, you know, I think at the end of the day, you probably go and tell Jonathan, how about we do this? We're going to give you a week to clear your head, have the conversations you need to have. Just know that this is where we stand. This is where we're at. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to tweet. We're not going to do anything out in the public. Nothing's going to leak out. We're going to give you your time and your space to kind of regenerate what you need to regenerate. If you're able to play football for us, we'd love to have you. If you can't play football for us, we have to make a business decision, just like you're making a business decision by not being up there and, you know, and kind of going through this process. We're going to put you on the NFI list, and you're out for the first 4 games of the season. Go ahead and rest up, get rehabbed, get healthy, and then you can just get away from the facility. You know, you don't need to be here anymore. I think that's the rule. It's a little bit hard. You know, we don't know enough about this because we don't deal enough with this. But I believe at that point he would not have to be involved in practices. So that distraction that he's causing right now kind of needs to go away. And it's unfair to all of the other players because quietly, Josh Downs and Anthony Richardson, players like that are having really good camps. Alec Pierce, they're doing some really, really special things, but you're not hearing as much about those things because you're just so saturated with this Jonathan Taylor saga. And it all stems back from his agent. A lot of prior, tweets that he's had out there. Very, 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 we're not going to say them on here, but very insensitive things just to say about human beings in general, as well as, personally attacking the owner of our football team. And, for me, I got to question a guy that's on my football team that is going to side with that person who said that about my owner. I gotta question that a little bit. Like, where do you align here? Do you align with this football team, or do you just align more of just with yourself? So yeah, man, fascinating. A lot more to come,
Yeah.
I'm sure. I feel like it's developing. We've literally been doing this podcast for 16 minutes now, and there's a possibility we're gonna end this
I
recording.
know. I'm almost checking my phone while you're talking.
And something's gonna change. I mean, it's just that wild, and things are. One thing about the Colts, these things don't come out a lot with the Colts. We're very tight-lipped, which leads me to believe that none of it's coming from Chris Ballard and all of it's coming from Jim Irsay. And he's kind of making his stamp. And I think he, behind closed doors said, this is my football team, and I will not be ran through the mud like this. I will not be treated like this. And this is what we're going to do. And it's a non-negotiable situation. This is how we're going to handle it moving forward. Very interesting. Final thoughts, Stephen?
I mean, yeah, it's just as you look, I mean, like you said, yesterday we got the alert that he demanded the trade, and then within like 50, I think I was doing an episode when we heard Jim Irsay basically come back out and say, yeah, he's not going anywhere. So it's like it's ever flowing, ever changing.
Yeah.
And I want to say one thing, kind of piggyback on what you said too. It really irks me, like when we talk about Jim Irsay, right, and we talk about his name kind of being dragged through the mud. I've got to say that anybody who follows me like on Twitter or on Threads and you saw a recent one, it's because I got a little upset. But anyone who constantly brings up the incident from 10 years ago and says that's what he's doing and he doesn't know what's going on needs to shut up. And just stop it. Like, it's brought up. It's 9 years ago. It's one of the most frustrating things as Colts fans that we see for someone who has done so much good since. And it's constantly brought up by high people too, like people with like verified people who have hundreds of thousands of followers who say that he's out there doing this and that's why he's not paying the player. Yeah. It's crazy and it's annoying and it just needs to stop. And I know I got on a soapbox there at the end with it, but it's so frustrating because he does take great care of his players. Look around the facility at the number of players that are employed not only on the coaching staff, but inside the front office.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. And a man who obviously made mistakes, paid the penalty of, being, with a suspension, as well as the embarrassment of being, letting all of that stuff come out. And then has kind of dedicated his life mission to mental health and just wellness, right? Like he said, he took a real negative and turned it into a positive. And for people to just kind of turn that around and throw that up in his face like it's a joke, shame on you, man. Shame on you, man. I mean, because it's not funny. I think everyone has been affected by somebody in their life that's had some issue of some kind, whether it be mental or, any type of an addiction or whatever it would be. And just think about how you would feel if someone treated someone that way. He's a billionaire, but he's a human being. And it's just that simple when it comes right down to it. But guys, before we hop off here, just want to take a quick second to thank each and every one of you guys following us all through training camp. We're so excited about a lot of the stuff that we've been rolling out this year. Just really looking forward to less negativity and more positivity. Some of these young rookies, I mean, Anthony Richardson is just a light. That light just shines more and more bright every single day, just because of his attitude, the way he handles everything. Guys, I am totally understanding of how things are going to go with many ups and downs. We're going to be on a roller coaster ride all together all season long. But it's just refreshing to have a young kid who has a great attitude, wants to come in, wants to win football games, and wants to do it the right way. And until next time, I guess, Stephen, like you always do, man, send us out of here.
Yeah, as we always do. And one, as you say that one quick thing. go on wager. You can go over to WagerWire, who's our amazing sponsor, right?
Sure.
And you can bet on Anthony Richardson to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year because I think the odds
As did
are
I.
really good odds right now because he's not the favorite, which is shocking to me. So
Yep.
go over there and check that out. But I'll send us out the way we always do, man. I love you. I know Zach loves you. We're going to love seeing everybody because we're going to be at camp next weekend
Yes,
together in person.
sir.
So we're really pumped. We're out.
We're out.